What's going on, everybody? It's Brian Tripp. I'm back at the law offices of Jeff Parmer. How's it going, Jeff?
Good deal. Good today.
Good, awesome. Today's real estate investing tip, we are going to talk about double closes versus assignments. This is something that, especially if you're wholesaling, we talk about this a lot, Jeff. And you just got done mentioning that you wanted to know my opinion about it. Well, I turned around, I want to know your opinion about it. It's obviously you're going to make more money as the wholesaler if you're not double closing, if you're assigning it because you don't have extra fees to pay.
Correct.
But sometimes real estate wholesalers want to double close because I guess there may be some fear that the buyer might know how much the wholesaler's making, or sometimes the seller will now know that the wholesaler is not going to actually be the person buying the property. So let's just talk about start off with just the differences between the two. What's the difference between a double close and an assignment?
Okay, Brian, a double close really means that you as the wholesaler enter into a contract with an owner of a property to buy the property, and then you enter into a separate contract to sell the property to a third party.
Two separate contracts.
Two separate contracts with two separate real estate transactions, typically occurring on the same day simultaneously. An assignment, on the other hand, you enter into the contract with the seller of the property, the current owner. You then enter into an assignment agreement with a third party that you're going to assign your contract to. And there is, in essence, one closing with one set of closing fees, and that original seller conveys directly to the end buyer.
So a lot of people in our space, the wholesaling space in particular, in a double close situation, are using the end buyer's money to fund their purchase of the property before they sell it back to the end buyer. That seems to me from the outside looking in, that could be a gray area. How is that possible that could even happen?
Well, I think the best practice, and I think the one that most folks that do this type of work use, is to have a disclosure to the end buyer that lets them know that this is a double close, that it is in essence a simultaneous purchase of the property by the person or entity that the end buyer is buying the property from, and that their money may be using to fund the rest of the transaction. And as long as the end buyer is okay with that and is willing to sign that form, I don't see a problem with it. Now, I will say that I've heard some other states that have taken a look at this and may be attempting to ban that type of transaction. So, I guess for that reason, what we've started trying to encourage folks to do is to do the assignment, because I do think it's a cleaner transaction that way. So
That's a great segue. So let's talk about the assignment then, because you just got done telling me kind of right before we started this video that there might, so the fear for the wholesaler to not do an assignment is that the other two parties are going to know what's going on when you may not necessarily want them to.
Right.
Which, whether that's right or not, let's just forget about that part of it. But you were saying there might be a way to still do that with an assignment.
Yes. And at the time of closing, we can do, on these cash transactions, we can do the good old HUD 1, everybody knows, the combined, it's got everybody's fees on the same closing statement. Or we can do a variant of that, which is a buyer side closing statement and a seller side closing statement.
And each one just sees the
That's
other.
right. They're separate closing statements. Each side just sees their own closing statement. That way, the buyer doesn't see what's on the seller side, seller doesn't see what's on the buyer side of the closing statement. So, that's one way that, it can accomplish the goal of keeping the arrangements that you've got with your end buyer separate from what you might want the seller to know about.
And these transactions can't, if they needed to, they could occur at different times of the day. They could occur maybe at the same time, maybe in different rooms.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely.
And we encourage people, the way I teach, we encourage people to be truth tellers and truth seekers. If you just let everybody know what's going on ahead of time, you're not going to have this issue. And here's what's going to happen. It's happened to me 100% of the time, that the seller's not going to care who you sold it to, and the buyer's pretty much not going to care how much money you're making. Obviously, there might be a couple of exceptions to that, but if especially if it's a buyer you've worked with before, I just wouldn't even get into that at all. Just be a truth teller, be a truth seeker, and you're not going to have anything to worry about.
I agree with that 100%.
Is there anything else on assignments and double closings that I didn't bring
I
up?
think that pretty well covers it, Brian.
Awesome.
I think so.
Well, appreciate you, Jeff.
Absolutely.
And thank you guys for tuning in for another episode. We're going to come back next week with another great real estate investing tip from our expert, Mr. Jeff Parmer.
Great. Thanks, Brian.